Hi, I'm John. This is my show, An American Scheme, where I'm proving that Diana Ross is Michael Jackson's actual mother. So let's get into this really quick. This is the video just to set it up really quick. When Leaving Neverland came out, that was a 2-night event. Part 1, Part 2. After the Part 2, Oprah did a live show with Wade and James where they just completely threw Michael under the bus, labeled him as just the ultimate scandalous guy, setting up the kids. Everything about what he was doing was orchestrated to be the ultimate pedophile, just like the grooming techniques. Everything they're saying that Michael was doing was for grooming. I mean, that's how bad it was. So they did that night with Oprah. Then the next morning, I believe it was, they went on CBS This Morning with Gail King, and they did this interview. And you'll hear when people go see their psychiatrist and shit, and then those psychiatrists speak to them in ways, and you can tell that people, after they're being exposed to psychiatric, whatever that psychiatric experience, that's what they're talking about. This has nothing to do, well, it has something to do with it, because they use the reality of that. See, and one of the things about the kids with Michael that, because I'm kind of an odd thing, that I totally defend Michael, that he's not a pedophile, but I do understand that he was physically touching on them and hugging them. And because of that part alone, there is an actual damage that occurred that got these kids to go to the psychiatrist. But the psychiatrist sabotaged these kids and did something. What this thing about Michael Jackson, all about with these kids involved, and what's probably with all the other kids, mostly what you're going to find, it's always that there's psychiatrists involved. Once the psychiatrists get involved, we enter into a different understanding of what's going on, because now you're going to have their interpretation of what they're wanting to get out of it, and all this stuff of how they're manipulating the process. And what you're clearly going to see here is that from Wade and James is that their whole speech patterns here are formed out of their psychiatric experiences that they've been having. And it formed all of the understanding that Michael abused them when he never did. The psychiatrist abused them. This is what really happened. So one thing I want you to hear here is listen when James says little James, and then in the next video when I skip it over, you're going to hear Wade say little Wade. And it's like they both speak exactly the same ways, using those same speech patterns, because they're being subjected to the same psychological process that's going on. And I do believe that they're seeing the same psychiatrist too. That's what I'm saying. I could search more here and I could find better information, but this is already going to take up enough time, and because I'm trying to explain things and I'm going to have to show you some actual videos, it's going to take enough time as it is, so I can't show you everything. But I do believe that it's even the same doctor, and in one of these he mentioned the doctor's name, but I didn't want to go searching for all that stuff. I didn't need it for the context of this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this started.
You're both admitting to us that you did lie in the past. The Jackson family and Jackson fans, as you know, are adamantly defending him and saying that you all are admitted liars. You're trying to exploit him. He is no longer with us. You're just opportunistic and trying to get money from the estate and from Michael Jackson. What do you all say to that?
It's an old argument that they've used for many, every time they come out with that. They say it's just about the money. For me, the lawsuit was about fighting back for little James. Nobody fought for me as a kid, but I'm old enough now to fight for myself. So win or lose, that doesn't matter. What matters is fighting. And so that's part of my process, my healing process.
Mm-hmm. I understand why that's hard for people to get, because it's really complex, emotionally, psychologically. The way that this has evolved for me, after I fell apart emotionally in an explicit way with a couple of nervous breakdowns, which led to me disclosing the abuse for the first time to my therapist. Once I began talking about it after 22 years of silence, it initiated this kind of, everything I'd been holding down for 22 years started coming out of me, right? This emotional and mental and physical upheaval And then some point in that healing process, I would say, I don't know, maybe 9 months or so in, what started arising in me was this question. First, how can I take this thing that happened to me, Michael abusing me, this horrible thing that happened to me, that shouldn't have happened to me, that shouldn't happen to any kid, but it did. So what can I do with it now? Right? How can I take this bad thing and try and turn it into something good for other people and for myself? So from that question arose this desire, how could I tell the truth? And where? And what platform?
That's really it. What platform? Because this is the thing in our society, is that once you become a victim, you can become a victim's advocate. And then you become a speaker, and you get to write books, okay? And you get to do speaking engagements. People welcoming you on their shows. You're respected. Your opinion's respected. Okay, now, whether he's abused or not, the way we're moving into society is that he's moving into that platform, okay? That's where we're going. Doesn't matter. Now, do you hear him constantly referring, like when you, like obviously I'm not showing it here, but if the people that know, when you hear him, you don't hear him constantly referring to, hey, you weren't the one getting Michael Jackson's penis up your anus. You know, you weren't the one having Michael Jackson's penis in your mouth, because that's the actual detailed descriptions you would get from kids that were being sexually abused, in which the level of what these guys are describing of what Michael Jackson was doing to them. Okay, if they were being sexually now what they're talking about is like, I'm trying to deal with the realities, and I'm trying to fix little James and little Wade. You'll see, you know, that's how they're actually talking. It's a psychological thing. And you could tell the psychological person who's doing this to them, their therapist, whoever, their psychiatrist, he's forming thoughts into their heads. And then that's how all of these processes of self-discovery are coming out. And I'll show you this in the next clip. But then he's also leading to them, like see how James was saying, you gotta fight, I gotta fight, you know, and that's what Wade's doing. I'm gonna fight, I gotta be an advocate, you know, and that's what they're actually being coerced to do. When the reality of the understanding of that doesn't matter, that they weren't actually, in their heads they think they were victimized because they were manipulated by some psychiatrist, you know? They're freaking brainwashed. Look at the freaking dead stare. That's not a kid with emotions being like, I was sucking on Michael Jackson's penis. Man, Michael Jackson was putting his penis on my anus every time he chant. Okay, that's not what you get from these kids. What you get is, I'm under psychological, and it's an emotional thing, and people can't understand because it's such, we can't understand because we don't understand how you were abused by this psychiatrist to get you to the point, come out where you're telling people, I was sucking on Michael's penis. Michael's putting his penis in my anus all the time, you know? But no, you know, they say that, but they don't talk like that. These are not kids that were sexually abused. There is no actual talk of being sexually abused. There's like, I loved him, and he loved me, and it's all the stuff they're talking about him being like a grooming techniques, and it's like, well, that's who Michael Jackson is, you know? So they just easily turn that switch and said, he's grooming you, and that's what you see from these fuckers. Okay, so now watch this. And this will be Wade telling you about.
I'm off the hook.
I think when you had your sons too.
Listen to this. This is
Wasn't
this how the psychiatrist did it?
A life-changing moment for both of you when you had your sons.
That was everything. My son being born. If I never had a son, I might still be in silence.
Really?
I think there's a really good chance. Mm-hmm. What I understand about it now.
What I understand about it, because how the psychiatrist has got him to understand it, right? See, he's so disconnected that's.
Over the years,
the psychiatrist talk
through the process of kind of pushing all of this down, that I had no relationship with Little Wade. I had no
Little Wade. See the talk, that word? It's a dead giveaway.
And in your son, did you see yourself?
Exactly to what James said, little James. That's psychiatrist talk.
They're what happened to
seeing
me,
the images,
happening to my son.
The images.
I saw images of Michael doing it to my son.
It's in his head.
And that was the first.
He saw Michael abusing his son. That's his problem.
Kind of in relation to Michael, ever had an extremely negative.
Yeah,
scary,
I sure don't see any tears in his eyes, being emotional.
Reaction.
Oh, real emotional. I don't see any emotional reaction. I see a guy under a psychological manipulation.
Looks like and feels like
and now he's, because the psychiatrist got to him,
that was me.
He's starting to have psychological thoughts to his own kid.
Is what they're saying.
That was totally the psychiatrist did that. You can tell the whole process of what was going on there. It's the psychiatrist did this to them and got him to start thinking about Michael Jackson sexually abusing them, got them to visually see it in their head, because the psychiatrist got him to visually see it in his head to the point of where Wade was seeing Michael Jackson sexually abusing his own kid. You can see the psychological manipulation has occurred, because that's when he started seeing it like, come on. And then you said, oh, I got to protect my kid and I got to protect all kids because Michael abused me, and it's all this psychological babble dribbling. Then, oh, I got to be an ad. I got to find a platform. I got to find the right platform to be an advocate. So now I can be a hero, That's what's actually going on here. And now I'm going to show you the real world application of where these things have occurred and how it occurs. Okay, so this is a video on the page of A Call for an Uprising. And it's weird because he talks about these people like they're Satanists in our society. And then this is one of those weird things about him, because it's like, dude, this obviously shows that these people are being set up by psychiatrists, and that these kids in the McMartin preschool thing, it's like they clearly were set up by psychiatrists who coerced them into making these outlandish stories because they're way too outrageous to be true. Way too. And if they were true, if your kid, a kid doesn't have to tell you the truth. Anybody who has a kid, if you sent your freaking kid to a daycare and your kid was freaking abused by Satanists, your kid would come home looking different. The kid doesn't have to tell you what happened. You would see, oh my God, that kid, something happened, And then you would start asking him, and then the kid would be telling you about it. You don't got to take the kid to a psychiatrist to get it out of them, to get them to unlock their deep, dark secrets so they can confess and deal with what really happened, It's the psychiatrist that led all. What happened is something happened where these kids were brought into psychiatrists, and somehow a psychiatrist took advantage of the situation, wanted to manipulate and control and see how he could have that effect on society, how it would flourish. That's what they do. This is the way they do real life testing on actual society. But the McMartin, I don't see any proof that there was sexual abuse going on there. And this is just a little clip here. You'll hear these people. They claim that these people were abusing these kids because they talk about this is things. What happens is somewhere a parent takes a kid to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist does shit, manipulate them. Now they say, oh, the kid's being sexually abused. Well, who's he with? And then the psychiatrist is like, oh, then they start digging that story. They start building it into the kid. Oh yeah, they're saying that that's who it is. And then next thing you know, you get stuff like this. Now watch this.
The first charges came in a letter from the district attorney.
I came home from work and I walked in and Raymond said, I wasn't going to show this to you, but you better look at it. And I couldn't believe it when I looked and I read it.
Can you imagine myself or any human being putting your head in a vagina, or sticking toes there, or touching different places, or putting a fist up their anus? It just wouldn't make it. Wouldn't there be some sort of serious damage? Wouldn't you notice right away?
Every year, thousands of people.
The adult is to talk about fist in the anus, head up a vagina.
No direct physical evidence.
You don't hear that from Wade and James. They don't talk on that level. But that's how the real people. Are you serious? I ain't putting my fist up somebody's anus. What are you talking about?
They simply don't know enough about sexuality to come up with detailed accounts of sexual abuse. But then Cornell University professor Stephen Ceci read the testimony of some well-known molestation cases and concluded that interviewers had led the kids on by asking suggestive questions. The interviewers could say, how else can we get this information out? Because the kids won't volunteer it.
The problem is that from a research standpoint, we are now discovering that if you put kids who were not abused through the same kind of highly leading repetitive interview, some of those children will also disclose events that seem credible, but in fact are not born in actuality.
Now, others have suspected this, but Cece decided to test that theory. He set up an experiment known as the Sam Stone study. He told a classroom full of 4-, 5-, and 6-year-olds that a man named Sam Stone would come to their class and that he was very clumsy. Then the man came in, stayed a few minutes, and left. That's it. He didn't do anything clumsy. Then, 4 times in the next few months, half the kids were asked leading questions about the man's visit.
Do you remember when Sam Stone came to the school and he broke that toy? Did he do it on purpose or was it an accident? Well, he didn't break a toy. So it's highly suggestive, erroneously suggesting questioning.
Really leading.
After that, another interviewer simply asked,
I wasn't there that day, and I want to know everything that happened that day that Sam Stone came to visit. Can you tell me what happened?
This little boy said Sam Stone was reading a book during the visit to the classroom.
He was doing it so fast that he ripped one of the pages.
Really? Did he say?
This girl said Sam Stone threw dolls and books in the air while he was in the class.
Well, when your teacher saw that he was throwing things in the air, what did she say?
Then you need to go.
You need to go?
Yeah, but you keep on ripping our stuff.
Just asking leading questions inspired most of the kids to make stories up. In real-life cases, though, are the investigators as suggestive as your testers are?
What we do is a pale version of what happens in real cases.
See, it's nothing.
It doesn't come close, for example, to what was done in Kelly Michael's case.
What they really do.
The Essex County Prosecutor's Office says 26...
Okay, so see how they were leading the questions, and this is a psychological process of what's occurring. And now I'm going to show you that in our modern society, how advanced and common this form of psychological attack of what's happening. Now I'm going to show you, and you're going to see from all that stuff, what I just shown you, you're going to understand this is a psychological attack, and understand that it was done on a presidential election stage. Let me get in as much as I can of this. So you can see CNN, okay, and this is what we're talking about, like CNN, when Trump keeps calling CNN fake news, okay? They're not just fake news. They're actually practicing propaganda, very sophisticated propaganda, like psychological warfare. And now, listen to the question that this woman, listen how it happens, and look at what she asks. And you can tell that that's exactly like how with the children, how they were leading the situation through a psychological. So what you can understand is that this question is a psychological question. It's not a question as a journalistic question, okay? They're not doing journalism anymore. They're doing psychological warfare on the people.
Turn to an issue that's come up in the last 48 hours. Senator Sanders. CNN reported yesterday that, and Senator Warren confirmed in a statement, that in 2018, you told her that you did not believe that a woman could win the election. Why did you say that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on this, because this is what Donald Trump and maybe some of the media want. Anybody knows me, knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States. Go to YouTube today. There's some video of me 30 years ago talking about how a woman could become president of the United States. In 2015, I deferred, in fact, to Senator Warren. There was a movement to draft Senator Warren to run for president. And you know what? I stayed back. Senator Warren decided not to run, and I did run afterwards. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. How could anybody in a million years not believe that a woman could become president of the United States? And let me be very clear. If any of the women on this stage or any of the men on this stage win the nomination, I hope that's not the case. I hope it's me. But if they do, I will do everything in my power to make sure that they are elected in order to defeat the most dangerous president in the history of our country.
So Senator Sanders, I do want to be clear here. You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
I disagreed.
Bernie is my friend, and
So did you see, she sets him up, he explains everything in abundance. Like, what are you talking about? That is ridiculous. Not even the thought wouldn't even be in my head, let alone what I ever say. A woman couldn't be president. The actual thought of that is not even anything about what I would be. That's just ridiculous, right? And then he says this whole thing, but then the woman, again, let me clarify, because she's setting him up. When she said, do you see how she set that up? She says, okay, so you said that a woman can be president, or whatever. And then she says, okay, Warren, how did you feel when he said that to you? When he, it's like she said, okay, you didn't say this, right? And then she says to him, okay, well, I'm going to call him a liar, because the next question to you was like, even explaining it, it's like, wow, the psychological, what they did. That's what I'm saying. That's not journalism. That's psychological warfare on the public. And that's one of these things is, I see a lot of these people in Hollywood, when you see them and when they get older and they start talking like kids, they start talking about, oh, when I was a kid, this, it's like, dude, it's because they're hitting the psychiatrist and they're doing all kinds of weird brainwashing stuff to them, plus the psychiatric drugs that they're exposing them to that I don't know, but it's like, they've got massive influence, and they've definitely have got the influence. You can see it clearly that Wade, Robson, and James Safechuck, they clearly had got taken in by some kind of psychiatric experience thing, which got them to formulate thoughts in their head, which all of the kindness and stuff of what Michael had got, the grooming, they just simply just turned it a little bit to say, oh yeah, well, he was sexually abusing you too. Yeah, all of that time with all the grooming, because all of the grooming was there. I mean, all the cuddling and all this stuff, that was all there. So see how easy it was for a psychiatrist to turn that into a deviant, oh, well, he was having sex with you. The reason he was doing that was because he was having sex with you. You're a victim. You've got to stand up for your right. You got to fight. You got to fight for little James. You got to fight for little Wade. Do you see how the context of those words are developed? They're through a psychiatric experience. It's not through the real life experience that they experience. Just how those kids were talking about that Sam Stone experience. The one kid's like, oh, he was reading the pages so fast, he ripped one. And you can see that that's how the kid talks. That's how a kid's mind would say that, yeah, he's reading the pages so fast that he would rip one. Like if a kid was writing a story, that's the way it would be written. That's the kid's mind. But then the psychiatrist, if the kid says some crazy shit like, yeah, he was touching me. Next thing you know, he kept putting his finger up my butt. Next thing you know, whole hand was up my butt. Okay, if the kid says that, you're going to be like, well, Jesus Christ. How do you, it's like, well, you definitely, at one point you can prosecute. If a kid's willing to make a testimony, if a kid says that, you document it through a psychiatric person, a doctor, saying that, no, this is real. The kid was, abused. You can definitely put somebody in jail for that, whether it happened or not. And that's what I'm saying. These psychiatrists and the ability and what they're able and what they're doing and the mass, what they're doing now is exposed of how massive level, because they even did it to frickin' Bernie Sanders on the frickin', this is a presidential debate. That's what they did to him. There was a presidential debate. On the presidential debate stage, they used that form of psychological warfare. And that's what I'm saying. That's new. They used to do reporting and do proper reporting, and they would dig into them with questions. They would dig into them, and people had to deal with it. But now it's this psychological thing going on, and that's where Trump's yelling fake news. CNN's fake news. And right there is, not only are they a fake news, they're actually psychological warfare against the people. That's actually what they are. CNN's not fake news. It's psychological warfare against the people.